talking about exactly what the state of social impact is and how thought leadership impacts it. So Victoria, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Chuck. It's great to be here.
So first of all, how do you define social impact in terms of what you're doing for the what I believe you refer to as purpose-driven clients that you work with?
Sure. So social impact is the name of our practice area. Mm-hmm. So we work with purpose-driven brands and on social issues. So companies ranging from Under Armour, Unilever, many different kind of companies across the globe as well. And then different other sectors as well, like nonprofits, foundations, and some government agencies like USAID and the United Nations. We do a lot of work with the UN, actually. So that's the name of the practice area. But then I think when we define social impact, we look a lot to things like the UN Sustainable Development Goals, which set out a global agenda for what truly sustainable development would mean. And that could be anything from access to water, sustainability, management of resources, good education, empowerment of women and girls, good health. So it's a real range of issues that we'll work on.
But it is more specific than just, frankly, what's become a fairly vague notion of corporate purpose or organizational purpose. It's really tied to sustainability and specific goals.
It is. We work with a lot of companies who are looking to understand how they can grow sustainably while also having a positive social and environmental impact. When we started the practice about 10 plus years ago, there was not as much activity in this space as there is now. It's really been an evolution in the last 10 years that's been pretty amazing, especially in the last couple of years. And what happened a lot of times was companies had philanthropic initiatives that they would do. They would have a foundation, they would give money, they would give back to the community, but they weren't always thinking about how they could leverage their business for social impact as well. So how do you look at the core business and what you do and how that contributes to social impact?
Okay, I want to get to the CEOs and the C-suite in particular.
Sure.
You as an organization have been pretty thoughtful, particularly about the CEO end and in terms of investing in this research, about CEO activism. So do you think it's almost a prerequisite at this point for a CEO to be an activist, to be also a thought leader, to, just in terms of, CEOs aren't just there to speak out, they're there to drive growth. And presumably thought leadership helps do that. Is social activism a critical, inherent, necessary component for being a thought leader now?
I think it's a growing important area for CEOs, because I think the expectation that you're going to go into any setting and not be asked about any number of issues really needs to be, you just can't think that that's the way it's going to be anymore. So I think it's about being prepared to have a point of view on a wide range of issues and not be caught on the back foot. That isn't to say that every CEO has to become Mark Benioff of Salesforce, or what we saw with Howard Schultz when he was in charge of Starbucks, very notably, and many others. I think you have to do what's authentic for the CEO and what the company thinks is right. So they have to make choices about how far ahead you want to go on any number of issues. But I think it would be an ill-advised CEO to not be prepared to expect to be answering some of these questions.
What do you find to be you may not want to get into this, but what do you find to be the most common mistakes or misunderstandings that CEOs have about
taking a stand? I think it's really extremely important to root your purpose in your values, much as like what we were talking about before, is that when you are coming out on an issue, that it be an issue that feels authentic to your company, that it feels aligned with the values that you've always held or the values that you want to hold as a company. I think a lot of companies too need to make sure that if they are going to go out on an issue, that their own house is in order, that they're not having products that are contradicting something that they might be saying, that they're not acting or have a practice that contradicts some of their statements that they're making. So it's important to look across the company before going out proactively on an issue and make sure that you're good on that particular issue.
Social media activists that are going to come after you.
Exactly.
And, slap you down.
And social media it's an accelerant for all of these conversations because people are savvy and they spend a lot of time understanding where companies are, and the CEO is the most visible face of a company, so they want to know what the company's policies are. Right. And they will, we've done a lot of research on this as well about boycotting instead of boycotting, that you might proactively buy more from a company that you feel aligns with your values, and you may not be buying from a company that you feel that does not.
Okay, well, there's an upside then.
Yeah, there is an upside.
Do you think that CEOs are credible thought leaders, social leaders for
I think they are. The studies that I've seen have shown for the first time in a long time that trust in the private sector has gone up. And that's pretty meaningful. In an era, and we're here in Washington, D.C., and I think there's a lot of people who are very frustrated with political gridlock. And the idea that these companies can actually make positive change. I mean, you're seeing that with the action that a lot of companies are taking on climate change, where while the government pulled out of the accord, many companies are still continuing with their commitments to track against what would have been their obligations under the Paris Climate Accord. And they're making progress. So there's a real sense that there's a lot of change that can happen and be led by the private sector.